So we're going to start with I already got the plane started, but I'll start with the before start checklist.
079 to the Y, crosswind left downwind runway 14,
Alright, so starting from the pre-flight inspection that is completed, the passenger briefing, again, we talked about this during our lessons. We basically treat ourselves as the flight attendant, and then give our passengers a briefing to walk them through how to operate some of the seat belts and things in the plane, and then how to open, close doors, and where the vents are. And we're going to follow the checklist, the safety checklist, in order to do that. So S stands for seatbelt. We want to explain to our passengers how to fasten the seatbelt, how to unfasten the seatbelt, as well as when are seatbelts required. So basically during the taxi, takeoff, climb, and approach and landing, we want to keep both the seatbelt and shoulder harness on. And while we're in cruise flight, we can technically take the shoulder harness off. A stands for air vents and air sickness. We have a couple air vents in the cockpit, and they are right by our outboard leg, ankle. And then there are little levers to open and close the butterfly valve. And air sickness, we have 6X in the back, and if at any point any passengers feel unwell, we will encourage them to let us know, and then we will turn around, land back at the airport, or we can tell them, if we are cruising, we can tell them to focus, pick something off, really far off the horizon, and focus on those to help them feel a little better. And E stands for exit. We have one exit door, which is by the right pilot side. There are two levers, and we can use them to open and close the door. And if at any point there was an emergency landing and the door got jammed, we can break open any of the windows. Anything that you can see that is breakable is an exit for us. And T stands for traffic. We would want to brief our passenger the importance of looking out for traffic, and then they share the responsibility of doing that. And then we would refer to traffic as, in reference to a clock, right? Nose is 12 o'clock, right wing is 3 o'clock, left wing is 9 o'clock. And why we always want to check to see if our passenger has anything to add or any questions that they have. And then we can move on to seats and belts. Make sure that they are secured. Brakes is set. Electrical equipment, turn that off. This is again before start. We'll make sure that is in the off position. All our circuit breakers should be in place. Our carburetor is in the off position. All right, so you want to touch the items that you were briefing on off your checklist. Fuel selector is off the right tank. We are pretty equal on both tanks. I visually checked them during pre-flight. We got about 10 gallons off each tank. The right one has a little more, so now we are running off the right tank at the moment. And then we'll use the engine start checklist to make sure the engine starts normally. Throttle opens to a 1/4 inch open. Master switch was turned on. Electric fuel pump was turned on. I turned it off after the engine got started. Mixture was full rich. We will leave it on full rich throughout today's flight because we are going to stay at a lower altitude. Strobe and beacon, they are left on. Engine prime, we primed it a couple times because it was the second flight, but we normally prime it twice, even before when the plane was flying just ahead of me. And propeller area was clear, starter was engaged, throttle was throttled down to 1000 RPM. Oil pressure was checked, and electrical fuel pump was checked, and then fuel pressure was checked. Avionics master was turned on, and transponder is currently on and alt, and reporting altitude. Radios are set. So we will start from the radio. We make sure that the radio are tuned to the right frequency. We've been hearing people talk, and then we want to do a radio check, our COM1 check. want to make sure we got sufficient volume, making sure that we're monitoring or listening on COM 1 and then transmitting on COM 1. We're going to key up and then do a radio check.
November Alpha final, 14 full stop, Northampton.
Northampton Unicom 85 November Alpha, COM 1 radio check, please.
Loud and clear.
We checked our COM 1 and then we might as well check our COM 2 as well. And we'll switch over to microphone on COM 2 and then listening on COM 2 as well, making sure that we got some volume, and then the right frequency is 22.7 at this airport. Unicom 85 November Alpha, COM 2 radio check, please.
Loud and clear.
Awesome. All right, we're going back to COM 1 with the shortcut. The microphone button is the shortcut to swap between COM 1 and COM 2, or you can go to COM 2 and then switch over. Doesn't matter. Okay. All right. And now we're on the self-test page. Everything that shows up as in white means that the systems or the databases are up to date. Anything that's yellow means that they are out of date. So everything looks good in white. And then the next page is the calibration page, right? So LCDI, lateral CDI, is half left. So we're orienting ourselves along with the direction of the arrow, right? So if you turn yourself around, the LCDI, lateral CDI, is halfway left. Lateral flag is out of view. We don't see the flag. And vertical CDI is this glide path indicator, is half up. Vertical flag is out of view, right? 2 and from indicator, we have a 2. If the arrow on the inside of the circle is pointing in the same direction as the arrow on the outside, that means that we are in a 2. We have a 2 flag, and then the last thing that we check is the desired track is 150. Desired track is 150. Checks out over there as well. We can put in fuel on board. We said we had about 20 gallons. We'll type in 20 gallons. And then our fuel flow is already set to be to default at 9 gallons per hour. So with that, we can go continue, and also we can verify the transponder is also set to squawk 1200 with altitude reporting turned on. And everything looks good. Since we're not going to leave the area, we're going to put in Northampton in there, right? So this is our map. There are a couple ways to do that. So I went to the nearest and found Northampton. I'm going to direct to Northampton, right? That way we can gauge our distance, relative bearing from the airport once we're in the practice area. Okay. This GPS on A5, it has ADS-B in, so we can see traffic, which is pretty neat. And then that's part of our situational awareness that we can take advantage of. Radio is set and pre-taxi brief. The pre-taxi, remember all the briefs are on the back side of your checklist, right? That includes our passenger briefing, our pre-taxi briefing. For the pre-taxi briefing, we want to brief a couple things. Establish PIC responsibility. So during your check ride, you are going to the PIC. That means that you are going to make decisions as to, whenever we have, collision avoidance, for example, procedures, or in terms of, in times of emergency, you are going to be the one taking care of, land the plane in safely and then take care of your passengers. You want to brief that. Positive exchange of controls, that means our normal 3-way handshake to exchange controls between the two pilots. Remember that after your 3-way handshake or exchange of controls, you want to visually verify that the other pilot do have control over the plane. Airport diagram and taxi route, we will use the unofficial printout of the Northampton airport diagram to taxi to the runway or taxi around the airport in general. Taxi back instructions and hold short requirements. We are going to taxi to the hold short line right by the runway and then do our run up there. And then we'll hold short until we are ready to go, and then we'll call before we enter the runway. Stereo cockpit means that we are going to not going to talk or chit-chat during the critical phases of the flight. That would include taxi, takeoff, climbing, and approach to descend and to land. So if your passenger, especially the examiner, starts to chat, wants to start a conversation with you, you want to kindly let them know that you want to focus on the task that you are focusing on. And then another reason for why you want to do that is because, especially during critical phases, climbing and landing, if you keep talking, you kind of lose that audible cue if the engine is running a little differently, right? Collision avoidance, that means, first of all, we talked about it during the passenger brief that we are always going to be looking for traffic. And the other part is we want to make sure that even during the day, we want to make sure that our anti-collision lights are on. That increases our visibility to other aircrafts. The only time that we would want to turn it off is sometimes at night. Having the strobe lights on is really, kind of had a negative impact on your vision of your surroundings. That's when we turn those off. If you believe that you are on kind of a collision course with another aircraft, your procedures, right, bank to the right, and then call out traffic and all of that. Okay, cool. That's our pre-taxi brief. Our taxi area is clear. We want to clear left, clear right, clear the surroundings. Okay. And brakes check. We're going to release the parking brake, give it a little bit of power to get the plane move forward, and then use both your brakes. All right, check your brakes, right? If you want your passenger to check their brakes, you want to use the positive exchange of control and have them check their brakes. Okay, and the steering instrument, this is the only kind of instrument that we want to test is our turn coordinator. So the way it's supposed to move is that it should dip. The wing on the inside of the turn should dip, and then the ball, because of the centrifugal force, it should swing to the outside of the turn. And then that's checked, and then you will want to say, turn coordinator checked. And then we'll just follow the taxiway, and then be vigilant of any obstacles in your course, any planes, any people, vehicles, anything. Okay, and then today the wind is pretty light. We don't really need wind correction, but that's one of the other things. The last one on your pre-taxi checklist, which is controls wind correction. We'll want to make sure we have the wind correction while taxiing as well. And normally, or actually, let's just say 100% of the time, you don't want to do your checklist as you are taxiing. You want your undivided attention to be on the taxiway while the plane is moving, right? So the other thing that some people do is to turn the landing light on as to signal people that the plane is about to move, right? I think that's a good practice. So we'll leave our landing light on for now, and we'll just try to maintain center line, and then add the textbook said it's a brisk walk in terms of the taxiing speed, right? So about a 5 to 8 knot of a ground speed is good. All right, we're coming up on the whole short line. We're gonna, angle the nose as what we normally do into the wind. There's no wind, so whatever direction you choose. All right, angle the nose. We would do our engine run-up checklist. I will pull out the checklist. Parking brake is set. Throttle, we're going to run it up to 2,000. You want to briefly look out the window to make sure the plane isn't moving forward, because sometimes the parking brake itself isn't enough. You want to use your toe brakes as well. And then we're going to check our right magneto first, 2 clicks to the left. And we see about 100 RPM drop, which is well within the 175 requirement. Bring it back to both, be patient, let it stabilize. And then check the left. That's about 100 RPM drop. That looks normal. And then the next thing on our checklist is our carburetor heat. We'll turn it on. We should see a tiny little drop. That's a drop. We'll bring it back to the off position. And then the next is ammeter, right? So we know that the ammeter dances a little bit because our anti-collision lights is on, right? So now we turn them off. And then put a pitot heat load, right? So we should see our ammeter should indicate that positive load, right? Okay, now we can turn the anti-collision lights back on. Okay, vacuum. We don't have a vacuum on this aircraft anymore, which is great. Oil temperature is in the green, oil pressure is in the green, and fuel pressure is also in the green. Fuel gauges are still as expected, about 10 gallons on each tank. And annunciator panel, we'll check that. So that light is out because we don't have a vacuum anymore. Throttle down to 1000 RPM. We'll leave it at 1000 RPM. All right. Carburetor heats, verify is in the off position again. Electric fuel pump is on. A lot of people skip the highlighted line. You know who you are. And picture is set. Primer is in and locked. And flight instruments check, right? So this is when we check our 6-pack. We already checked our turn coordinator, so that's good. So our airspeed is indicating 0 because we're not moving. Also verify this airspeed tape on your G5 is also indicating 0. So you can see that we have our speeds, right? Our VR, VX, best glide, and then VY all indicated. So as we speed up, these numbers will move up with it. So it gives us a better indication of our airspeed, right? It's a visual indication. And then over here, our ground, we'll just, again, non-tower, we'll put in our field elevation, which is 120 at this airport. And then we'll put 120 over there, and then kind of verify the altimeter setting. Should be pretty close, right? That one reads 3014, that one reads about 3015-ish, so that's close enough. So if you were at a towered airport or with an airport with, altimeter reporting, right? So you will put your altimeter number in there, setting in there, and then verify if it is within 75 feet of the field elevation. If it is more than that, then that altimeter basically failed the check, right? So altimeter is a required instrument based on 91205. So that plane will be grounded for that day until it got checked out. So vertical speed is indicating 0 because we're not moving, sitting on the ground. And then we want to buck our heading for buck our runway heading, which is 140 because we're using runway 14 today. And then we already checked our turn coordinator while taxiing. So another thing that I want to add is your G5 on the top, your attitude, is also a backup for pretty much everything, right? We got the airspeed, the altimeter, we got the turn, kind of the turn coordinator, the ball down here, and then we got our vertical speed kind of on this side. Sometimes, I don't know how often you pay attention to it, but over here it says 10, that would be 1,000 feet positive rate, right? That's 1,000 feet negative rate, right? So there will be a little magenta kind of a trend that indicates on that side of the screen. All right, so that's our instrument. They are all checked out. Again, our fuel selector is verified on the right tank, is our follow tank. Seat back is erect. Belts and harness is fastened. Flaps is set with takeoff. Actually, we'll do a performance takeoff in a little bit. We'll use our checklist to set that up for now. Flaps in. Trim tabs is in the neutral position. I verified that. Controls free and correct. All right, so you want to grab on the yoke, right? So basically, we're making sure that your yoke should be pretty smooth, right? So we're going to push it all the way in, hitting all corners, right? Going all the way to the left. Look to the left of your wing. The aileron should come up, and then you're going to pull it all the way back. When you pull that, your stabilizer, the leading edge of your stabilizer should dip forward. And then we'll swing it all the way to the right. The right aileron should come up, and then when we push it all the way in, the leading edge of your stabilizer should come up, and then return it to the neutral position. And then we will reverse that order, right? And then just do it again for good measure, right? It feels pretty free, and then we visually check them that they are correct. All right, moving on. Doors, I'll latch the door in a little bit. Radios, we already set the radios, we already checked it. I'm gonna switch the Barnes ATIS on the stand to active on COM 2, so we can listen to it in a bit. Transponder is set, strobe on, landing light on, landing light they have been on, and pre-takeoff briefing. We will take off. The pre-takeoff briefing departure briefing is just normal departure, but it's not very comprehensive. So this is how I like my departure briefing to be done. First of all, I want to brief which runway that I'm using. I'm using runway 14, and then speeds. I'll rotate at 55. If it is a normal takeoff, I'll rotate at 55, and then the best climb is 79. And the next is wind correction, right? If look at the windsock, it's pretty dead, and that's to remind yourself to put in the wind correction. And the last is emergencies. The emergencies should be different at different airports, based on the runway environment, right? At this airport, if you roll on the runway, anything happens, you want to throttle down to idle, and full brakes, and then taxi off the runway to troubleshoot, if you can. If you've got airborne, and there's sufficient runway ahead, and then we'll again same thing, throttle to idle, and land straight ahead. Especially if we go to another airport, for example, Barnes, with almost a 10,000-foot runway, you definitely have the space to land straight ahead. But if you don't have sufficient runway left, it's going to be 30 degrees when they're your departure path, right? Basically ahead of the wings, into the wind. And that will be one of the fields off to the right, taking off on 14. But if you are at or above pattern altitude, especially after you turn on crosswind already, right, you can land on whatever runway that's the most suitable, right? You can land in a different direction if you have to. So that's our departure brief, and